I'm Tavi Nasir, and this is Leadership Biz Cafe, a podcast that provides insights and tools to help leaders take on the challenges and opportunities found in leading today's workplaces. Leadership Biz Cafe is brought to you by Tavi Nasir Leadership, our leadership firm that offers keynotes and corporate trainings in both in-person and virtual settings that will help you to improve the way you lead and guide your organization's growth and future successes. To find out how we can help you today with your leadership challenges and discover your untapped opportunities, visit our website at tavinasir.com. And with that, let's dive into a brand new edition of Leadership Espresso Shot. Have you ever noticed how much kids ask questions? No matter where they are, no matter who they're with, they always seem to find something that they have a question about. This behavior has been known to be a source of exasperation for parents, if not also the inspiration behind many jokes about parenting and childhood. And yet, when you think about it, it's understandable why children need to ask so many questions, as it's the way they learn about the world they live in. Sadly, as we grow up, we start to lose this inquisitiveness and desire to question and understand. As we go through the school system, we begin to refrain from asking questions out of fear that we'll appear foolish in front of our classmates for not already knowing the answer to what we're asking. And then when we move from the education system out into the workforce, we hold back from asking questions, thinking that we are somehow expected to already know the answers, this being especially true the higher up the ladder one goes in the knowledge-based industries. As adults, we've mistakenly learned to stop asking questions, even though it's the critical key to opening doors to knowledge, if not wisdom. Through the act of asking questions, we make ourselves look for answers, go down unfamiliar paths that allow us to expose ourselves to new ideas or information. By not accepting that something just is, we force ourselves to understand how come it is, and with it, develop a better appreciation for it. Through our inquisitiveness, we nurture our powers of observation, of taking notice of how things are done, and pondering the rationale behind it. And it was this sense of inquisitiveness that led a leader to ask me an interesting question after attending one of my recent keynotes. He told me he had spent a lot of time learning about how to get better at asking questions, and this led him to this question he asked me. How do I encourage my employees to get better at asking questions too? It's a great question, and seeing how the answer I shared really resonated, not just with the leader who asked me this question, but with the other leaders in attendance, I wanted to share my answer with you in this Leadership Espresso Shot, as this is an important benefit organizations derive from creating a psychologically safe and inclusive workplace environment. And there are 4 simple steps you can take that will help create an environment where your employees feel free to ask questions. The first step is to do what this leader is already doing, and that is to lead by example. As with any behavior organizations want to have adopted within their workforce, encouraging others to question has to start at the top before it can work its way into the rest of the organization. It's a common perception in most companies for leaders to be seen as having all the answers, a notion that can be perpetuated by both the organization's leadership as well as its employees. By reaching out to your team members and asking them what they think, of whether they see any issues arising from the company's current direction, it will demonstrate to your employees that your company doesn't want its workforce to simply maintain the status quo. Rather, it's open to new ideas and new solutions that can help improve the business. Of course, for small business owners, this can present a bit of a challenge to have others question how the business they started currently operates. But in these cases, it's important to recall that the reason you brought in these team members is to help you address some of the challenges your growing company will have in the near future. Asking them for their perspective will help you discover issues you might not have otherwise been aware of. The second step towards creating this space for employees to ask questions is to make sure you're focusing on their initiative and not just on the question being asked. If we remember that one of the reasons why we stopped asking questions as we grew up was because we were afraid of looking silly. It becomes clear that when encouraging employees to ask questions, it becomes easier to appreciate why leaders need to focus more on the employee's initiative of putting themselves out there to ask a question to better understand a situation, and not just on the value of their query. We have to remember that through their past work experiences, employees might have learned to ask safe questions. That is, they ask questions that don't challenge or question the status quo too much, and questions that leaders are not keen on finding the answers to. By acknowledging and appreciating the interest shown by your employees to start asking questions, you'll be encouraging a workplace atmosphere where employees will feel empowered to bring more challenging questions, which can highlight potential concerns they might have going forward, if not also unseen opportunities or paths worth exploring further. The third step to create an environment where employees feel free to ask questions is to make sure you listen to what's being asked. This might seem like an obvious step, and yet consider how many interviews or conversations you've seen where the person responding to the question failed to answer it. More often than not, it's not because they didn't know the answer. Instead, it was a result of their mind being focused more on what they expected to be asked, rather than on what the actual question was. And the truth is, we all do this. As I share in some of my workshops, our brain is a cognitive miser that doesn't want to waste our limited energy supply, and so we rely on past experiences and assumptions to quickly figure out what's the answer someone is after. And let's face it, as leaders, people are always asking you things, so it becomes almost a knee-jerk response. That's why you have to make sure you quiet your mind so as to really hear what's being asked. And finally, the fourth step in this process is to remember that time and practice are the key to succeeding in this effort. While many of us might have lost the habit of asking questions, this doesn't mean we've lost the ability. As with restoring any desired habit, it's going to take time and practice to take hold. Also, adding the act of asking questions into your company's culture will take time, as your employees will need to see that this is not merely the latest pet project of those in charge, but a concrete effort to encourage greater participation and involvement of everyone towards how the company operates. As children, we understood the power of asking questions to help us gain knowledge about our world. Likewise, it's important that through your leadership, you're not just asking more than you're telling, but that you're also encouraging that sense of inquisitiveness amongst your employees too. This will help them gain unique insights and understandings about the work they do and contributions being made by others in the organization. More importantly, it will foster a sense of belonging and purpose, something that's becoming less and less apparent in many workplaces today. As I mentioned at the start of this Leadership Espresso shot, this piece was actually inspired by a question I was asked after giving one of my leadership keynotes. And if hearing this episode and its message has you interested in having me speak at your next leadership event, I'd like to invite you to reach out to connect with me so we can discuss this further. Just go to my website at tavernasir.com and fill out the contact form. You can also find on my website my speaking and workshop pages to learn more about my speaking work and the topics I cover. In the meantime, I'd appreciate it if you could take a minute to support this podcast by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast streaming platform. I'm Tavan Nasir, and you've been listening to Leadership Biz Cafe.